What's up, guys? This is Coach Alex Van Houten on the Faithful Fitness Podcast. I'm super excited about our guest today. I get to hang out with Mr. Casey Ruff, who, incidentally, he and I just had a podcast conversation on his podcast, Boundless Body Radio. You can check out. We had that last week. What's up, Casey? How you doing today, brother?
Dude, I am still flying high after our conversation. We spent the first 5 minutes just complimenting each other on how amazing each one of us were. So that really pumped my tires for the week, and I'm still flying high. So
I
feeling good.
actually really like that phrase, pump my tires. I'm not much of a cyclist myself, but I can see that. I'm like, oh, my tires are pumped up. I
Yeah.
feel nice and light and airy and nothing sticking to the road. I was like, oh, I like that.
It's quite the contrast to my hockey buddies who just tear me to shreds. You got to kind of balance the two out. So yeah, we pumped each other's tires for sure.
That's cool. Well, maybe at some point in this conversation we get to pump each other's tires again, but we'll make everybody wait for that since, we gave it to them at the very beginning of our last conversation. Dude, thank you so much for joining me. We got a lot to discuss today. You come from you've been a personal trainer for over 2 decades at this point, I think.
Just less.
Just less, just under 2 decades. And I mean, time's flying. Like by the time, but you might as well. But you also come from a really niche camp with regard to nutrition, the keto carnivore world. And I can't wait to talk about that with you. And then also we have some things to discuss from the faith and the mental health aspect of things. So this is going to be a great talk. I sincerely appreciate you saying yes to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's such an honor to be here with you, and hope that the insights can help anybody out there.
So I want to start by asking you about Boundless Body Radio. So you and your wife, Bethany, you guys started that just before COVID, if I'm not terribly mistaken. What was the impetus for starting that podcast? You and I podcasted together, gosh, what was it, episode 139 of your show or something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
We were both taking podcast interviews from our closets because acoustically it makes a lot of sense. but you started that then. What was the impetus for starting it? And I think also, why do you continue doing that? Because it's definitely a discipline in the podcast space.
For sure. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. So the timing of everything was I was at a low carbohydrate conference in Denver the week of, what was it, March 12th, 13th, 14th, when the world was kind of shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
And I and my wife were both still working for the corporation that you also worked for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
We were still employed by them, but that was a very, very stressful weekend because, all the sports leagues were shutting down. I was watching Denver shut down in front of me. People were leaving this conference early. And we were really unsure about what was going on with the gym. If you recall, my program was all about standing next to somebody who was wearing a mask and breathing concentrated respirations, and you stand right next to them. And so my program was one of the first things to get shut down. So already, in the first or second week of March, I can't remember, my program was done. And I didn't really, we had our clients, and our clients were dropping off. And so we were put on unemployment about a week or so after the gym had closed down.
Holy cow.
And so, yeah. And every location of this corporation opened at different times. And, Utah being kind of a red state, we were on the leading edge of opening up. And so it was, I want to say the first week of May that the gym called and said, hey, your jobs are available again. We're opening the gym. And we're going to pay you $25 an hour to clean equipment and to call your clients. And then after 5 days, you're going to be back on 100% commission. Wow. And that just was not a viable option for us at the time because people were not working in the business complex around the gym anymore. People's behaviors and habits had already changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
We were training people outside and in parks and on screens, on Zoom, in pajamas and on trees and monkey bars and all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, that's and when I've built a personal training business from scratch when nobody's worried about COVID, and it takes months. It takes months. So you're talking hey, come in, we'll pay you hourly for a week. And then, hopefully your clients come back. And by that time, even in Utah, I bet most people weren't coming back to the gym in droves.
Dude, it was early May. I mean, people were doing a lot of really stupid stuff early. It was basically don't gather in groups unless you want to, then go for it, whatever. We don't care. But yeah, no, we getting a pulse of our clients. There were many of our clients that were not willing to come back. And again, a big portion of my pay was running that other program, which was not going to come back anytime soon either. So my wife and I had a lot of walks around the neighborhood and a lot of talks, and we decided that the best option we had was to open up our own business. So we opened the business first. Officially, I want to say that was like June of 2020. We came up with the name Boundless Body. And that's when we started our business. The podcast didn't come until after that. It was October when we did our first one.
Mm,
And I've learned so much through podcasting, as you have.
hmm.
And, I just knew that I wanted to start one. I definitely had the imposter syndrome thing of like, I didn't know what I was going to say that somebody else had already said in a way that was way better than me anyway. Um, and yeah, I pushed it out and pushed it out. In our first episode, we wanted to interview each other, and the morning of the interview came, and we were on separate walks, and I text my wife. I'm like, look, I need another week. Let me prepare for this another week. And she's like, no, let's just do this. Let's record. And we
Okay.
did. So yeah, and that was our first episode, and it was just the timing of how our business was building. Like you said, it can take several months. We had the advantage already of continuing to work with a lot of the people that we were
Yes.
working with before at the gym. We had a business built up. So that looked different afterwards, but I did
Sure.
still have more free time. And I just kind of settled into a cadence of doing an episode Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And 4.5 years later, we have not broken away from that cadence. And so we do 3 a week. And you asked like why we continue. I've never monetized the podcast. As you know, podcasting is a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time, and it's not cheap. Like you have to pay for things, the equipment, the hosting, editing software, all that kind
Hmm.
of stuff. And I've always just been very grateful that the business has done well enough that I can put that out in the world for free. And of
Hmm.
course, I use it as marketing, and I have a call to
Sure.
action after every episode and say, like, set up a free consultation. We can train you anywhere in the world, blah, blah, blah. And I have gotten a lot of clients from that. But it's just, it's like the conversation we had last week, as we talked about. Like, there's something special about pushing record on a conversation with somebody.
Mm.
You get to this level of openness and honesty, and like the number of little lessons and gems I've gotten over the years by pushing record, it's really amazing. And again, I know
Mm.
you know exactly what that feels like, and to
Yes.
be able to listen to you, for example, give a sermon through a podcast, I would not have had that opportunity. And that was
Mm.
super inspiring, dude. It was really good. So yeah, we've been able to keep it going so far, and the business is doing really well. So that was kind of the order of things.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I think podcasting is such a cool thing in that sense. There's the Greek word logos means like consciousness, and so when you say monologue, that's one consciousness speaking. But dialogue comes from dialogos. That means two logi, loguses, whatever, two consciousnesses coming together. And then when I can be honestly myself and you can be honestly yourself, then something really cool happens that couldn't happen, by ourselves, which is why an honest conversation with a person you admire and appreciate and have something to learn from can just be so cool. It's funny. I will walk in this door in a second. I'm in my garage gym / podcast studio. I'll walk through this door. My wife will say, "How was your conversation with Casey?" And I will say, "It's the best podcast I've ever done." And she goes, "You always say that," because that's what's going to happen. Because I always finish these conversations just so grateful for the opportunity to do them, and also having learned something about somebody I appreciate, and getting to share that is just powerful. So I resonate deeply with that. I do want to talk about podcasting in the wider world as a trainer, because neither you nor I, unless there's something I don't know about your background, neither of us were like taught how to do multimedia production, like sound quality, camera shots, editing, how to put that out in the world, and it could be argued that we still don't know what we're doing, or at least I don't. But that said, what was the learning curve like from my experience was listening to my first episode going like, I hate the sound of my voice. Why do I say
Terrible.
why do I say so much? Like, what is wrong with me? And after 100 episodes going, I'm kind of getting out of my own way of the content and getting out of my own way of a good interview. I'm happy with that, all the way to like, that was stupid. Let's say that a different way. What was the learning curve like for you when you started Boundless Body Radio?
Sure. I maybe your experience was a little bit different. Again, with the company that we used to be with, I was in an area where there was only one club in our entire like state, essentially.
Oh.
You were working in a place where like all the regional people were. There were multiple clubs. You could kind of move around. We like my experience working for that company was like being on an island. Like not many people knew this, but when I found ketogenic and carnivore diets, I completely changed how we did. Remember the 60-day challenges we would do?
Yes.
I went out completely rogue, threw away everything the company was telling me to do, and did a completely different program. They never found out. They had no idea. I tracked our
No
results.
oversight.
We had
It's like, this is
nothing.
Casey's Island.
Nothing. And I tracked everything, and we had amazing results. We had like 720 pounds of fat lost in the contest.
Wow.
Like all the people that I tracked over time, we gave them completely separate meal plans. All that to say, like we learned at that in that environment, we learned to be very resourceful. We weren't given a lot, and we had
Mm.
a lot of expectations. So they would say, "Hey, you got to run all these numbers, put them in Excel." Well, how the hell do I do that? Well, you got to figure it out. Go to
Learn.
Excel and start learning. Yeah,
YouTube
exactly.
University.
Yep. You're going to do a slideshow and you're going to do a 2-hour presentation. Okay. Well, how do I do that? I make it interesting and whatever. You figure it out. So I think that was helpful.
Mm.
Again, when I kind of stumbled upon the world of nutrition that I found, like that was the last time I ever listened to music in my car. So I think listening to tons of different podcasts and
Mm.
understanding how people do things a little bit differently was really helpful. Um, of course, you screw up. I say like listen. I listen back to every episode that I do when it comes out, and I'm constantly embarrassed by like, oh, I cannot believe I said this the wrong way. I am saying
Right.
too much. Which, by the way, for you listeners right now, you say just as much as we do, but you don't get recorded. We do. So
True story, man.
you're just as bad as we are.
That's
But yeah, like
hilarious.
as you do something, it's always, like you said, it's a yet mentality. It's you're
Mm.
learning and growing and learning how to extract different things from your people. I try to research so that I don't want to create the same episode that you've already done on other shows, 50 other times. I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to
Hmm.
discover something and find a new path and
Yes.
make our show like a little bit different. So, yeah, I mean, equipment, you improve. You watch a few videos, you learn some things. I did a completely separate podcast called the How to Make a Podcast. It was literally just about like not only describing my process of podcasting, but interviewing other podcasters to hear
Mm.
what their process was like. And I don't do that anymore. It's been several years, but yeah, you just, it's just like anything. It's just like fitness, nutrition, whatever. It's not about like doing something perfectly from the beginning. It's deciding to start taking that step and just deciding I'm going to keep taking steps. I'm
Mm.
going to get
Mm.
better. I'm going to refine. I'm going to work on my bandwidth if that's an issue, audio
Right.
quality, whatever. Like you just keep working on that and you'll improve.
Man, so I'm so glad you brought up fitness in that vein because in my head there was a connection between that, I'm not a podcaster, but I'm going to learn, and the everyday experience of an individual who decides to take some sort of ownership in their health and fitness, and I'm not a CrossFitter, but I'm going to learn to lift, or I'm not a nutritionist, but I am going to figure out how to feed myself better than I have been, right? And in any of those endeavors, I don't know if you play video games or not. I like video games, and I don't get to play them as much anymore because I'm like a dad and a business owner and a husband. So it's 20 minutes at 9:30 on a Friday. Ooh, I'm gonna play some anyway. But there's this thing in every video game that the gamers call the noob phase. NOOB, the noob phase. In other words, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm terrible at it, and it's not even fun. Like it's not. I'm playing this game, but it's not even fun because I suck so bad at it. I'm still learning the controls. I'm getting crushed by every person who runs by and understands how to use the sniper rifle or whatever. And there is that. It's been my experience. There is that in health and fitness. That there's a noob phase. I'm going to start weight training. I'm going to start doing cardiovascular work. I'm going to start figuring out my nutrition, and it's not any fun. Like it's a time period of sucking at the thing you're trying to change. It's the noob phase. So I was curious about you with the carnivore diet. At some point, you decided, hey, this is working for me. This is good for me. This, for whatever reason, anybody can come at me with their criticisms and stuff, but this has worked well for my household, starting to work well for some of my clients. Can you describe for me the time period that you made that shift in your life, and what, if any, was the noob phase like in carnivore and keto for you?
Absolutely. I can relate to the gaming thing for sure with the noob phase. I am a gamer as well, but I play NES, Nintendo NES, the original. I still have one. Dude, do you remember when your friend would get one and you didn't have it and they'd invite you over to play Mario 1 or whatever, and
Yes.
he could play level after level after level without it being your turn, and then you would just like immediately die
Die and
and
then
like have
hand the
to sit there
controller
and
back to him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I thought of. Dude, I'm a really slow learner. It took me a very long time, and there was certain things on my journey that kind of guided me there. We had a meeting at that company with a coach back in 2012 that was saying that he was getting endurance athletes really great results by feeding them high amounts of fat and reducing their carbohydrates, which made no sense to me. But he was preventing professional athletes from bonking, essentially
Hmm.
running out of energy in professional races. Um, we had a few years later, became familiar with the work of Nina Teicholz, who wrote a book called The Big Fat Surprise that goes over the history of why we are demonizing fat, why we think saturated fat is bad for us, red meat is bad for us. Eventually, I read the book and was, kind of made aware that maybe fat isn't so bad for us. But in 2017, I lost my regional role and had to figure out what I was going to do. And so I decided, since nutrition was a topic of interest to me, I decided to get my nutrition certification with a really prestigious company, and I got reindoctrinated into the idea of like lots of whole grains, lots of fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, a little bit of healthy fat, and I
Mm.
would give that out to people. In fact, they offered a software program that I would pay for that ran daily, weekly curriculums for people. It would deliver a lesson for somebody. They would have a bi-weekly, every 2 weeks, kind of a goal, like eat more vegetables, eat the rainbow of vegetables. Amazing, really well done. There was a workout component to it. I put hundreds and hundreds of people on that program, and literally two ever finished the entire curriculum, which ran for 1 year.
Wow.
People just failed. They could not do what we were recommending. Count
Mm.
your calories, track your foods, eat different vegetables. It just would not work. People couldn't do it, or they would be shopping at the store way too much and throw away tons of food at the end of the week. And it was even down to like some of the trainers. Like I knew some of the trainers couldn't do it, at least for the long term,
Mm.
the standard advice that we were giving people. And so it came to be that I was doing one of these weight loss contests, and a guy, um, he was an employee. He was kind of forced to do the contest. He really didn't want to, but he had 20, 25 pounds to lose. And he was doing a consultation with me, and he described, his diet. He was basically like waking up in the middle of the night to eat cereal. And I just said, dude, you don't have any like fat in your diet. Like, let's get a little bit more fat in your diet. Let's start eating protein. And he went away and came back in like 3 days and said, dude, I've lost like 3 pounds in 3 days. What is this keto stuff? And I
Mm.
said, that's cool. You can't lose 3 pounds in 3 days. I know that something must be off. Um, but he did. And that was the first time I'd like really been introduced. I'd seen the word kicked around, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And,
Hmm.
I kind of got cornered into learning about this state of the body called ketosis. And the best way I like to have it be described is it's like two hemispheres, or two different ways that your body can run. And one of my podcast guests describes the one way the body can run as glucosis, kind of a coin that he termed, that when your body's running on carbohydrates, it runs in a certain way and energy is delivered inside of this body a certain way. It
Hmm.
describes that almost like an emergency system that should run sometimes, but not all the time. And you have this other hemisphere that's called ketosis, which is just your body breaking down fat and producing a molecule called ketones that can be quite useful in the body. It's a water
Hmm.
soluble energy source. It's usable by the brain. It's preferred by the heart. And I just started learning about it, and I found this whole new world of like the frustration of giving people advice that was standard and it just wouldn't work for
Mm.
hardly anybody. And then all of a sudden, I'm giving people like the opposite advice, and it's working amazingly. Yeah. And it's like, okay, your goal was to lose 20 pounds, but your mental clarity is better and your digestion is way better. You're not bloated anymore.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
what is going on? And so it just completely changed my career as far as, being able to deliver workable results. We started doing those contests again when I was giving them different meal plans and telling people like, look, I don't even care which of these meals you choose, like a taco bowl or a pizza that you make at home with a meat crust, but like just make it, eat as much as you like. And all the people that ever signed up for the contest, they had different goals. Like maybe they wanted to gain weight or lose weight, or some did yoga, some did running. And we had such
Mm.
a big cohort of people that we tracked that got amazing results.
Hmm.
That's just what I decided to do. I really got kind of cornered into it, like I said, and people in the club started like making fun of me a little bit. They started calling me Keto Casey,
Keto
which I
Casey.
keto
Nice.
Casey, yeah, which I really didn't like. I mean, our registered dietitian eventually became my direct boss, and he wasn't into that, and so that kind of
Mm.
added a layer of conflict. But one of my other managers was like, dude, you should just own this and just know more about this one thing than other people. You can just specialize in this. So that's what I did. I don't think it's the best diet for everybody, and people can do whatever they like. That's just what I focus on.
Yeah.
And then in the low carb space, if you're there for long enough, you start to hear about this subset of really crazy people who are eating not low carb, but they're eating no carb. I like this idea that like they're not eating any fiber, they're not eating vegetables. You're like, well, that's insane. Like, what is that? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. The first time I heard about it was a Joe Rogan podcast. I literally just turned off the podcast halfway through because I was like, that's the
What is
stupidest thing
happening
I've
right now?
ever
Yeah.
heard. Yeah, that's so dumb. And you learn about it and you start to hear about it. And it was April of 2019. I was like, well, I'm gonna just try this for 30 days and see what happens. Maybe I'll never poop again. Maybe I'll die of a heart attack. I don't know. Um, and I was already fairly low carb and keto myself to begin with, and noticed those benefits. And by dropping out the rest of the plant matter that I had on my diet, the biggest thing, dude, I gotta say, it was like 10, 12 days in. A woman had been working with me to get started. She put down all her money and paid for a bunch of personal training sessions. I had done the free consultation. I'd done all the scheduling. You know how much work that is, and you're not paid yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now she comes in and she says, I want a refund. Give me all my money back. And that would have like ruined my week. And I just looked at her and said, like, yeah, okay, just fill out this form and we'll get you that refund. If there's ever anything you need in the future, like, let me know. God bless. I hope you find what you're looking for. And I did, just like reflecting on that, like later in the day, like, what happened? Why did I have that reaction? And I realized, like, it's hard to describe, but and carnivores, we all know it and we talk about it. It's called, we call it like carnivore zen, where your anxiety or stress or depression, your mental state just improve. Yeah, everything just kind of calms down.
Mm.
Like you lose your keys. Oh, okay. Well, I could look over there, or I've got a spare key. You just like that would have been a disaster. But where are my keys? Where are my keys? I can't find my keys. Now you just like, find them. I forgot this. Whoops, this broke. Okay, well, we'll fix it. We'll deal with it. Like everything just really relaxed. And now there's this whole emerging field that we call metabolic psychiatry. And it's not like keto for fun. It's not like keto for lose 15 pounds for a wedding and you eat bacon and butter. It's great. It's metabolic psychiatry is an emerging field of people fixing serious, severe mental disorders with diet and with ketones.
Mm-hmm.
And the research is incredible. The books are incredible. The case studies are just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of healing that's happening for, what I would consider for me, like run-of-the-mill anxiety, low-level depression, kind of just going away a little bit to, I've got friends and people I've talked to on my podcast that have literally reversed Alzheimer's disease. They've reversed bipolar. They no longer have epilepsy. Just the stories are absolutely insane. So, yeah, it's an exciting field to be a part of. And it's really cool to think what's possible when you're on what I would consider a really basic kind of standard human diet, the diet that we've evolved with for so long. The number of things that starts to resolve is pretty good. So now it's been 6.5 years I've been carnivore. I don't have an intention of going off. I'm not locked to it or anything, and I don't yell at vegans or anything like that. I just, for the people that want to learn about this to whatever level they want to learn, I'm here to like help guide them and give them ideas.
That's so funny. I don't yell
Stop
at vegans.
killing broccoli. Save the kale.
I will say anecdotally, I have no science to back me up on this, but I will say anecdotally, I've never gotten in a nutrition fight with a carnivore, but the vegans, for whatever reason, are out for blood, man.
Oh, dude, they're brutal.
They're not killing the animals, but they'll kill you if.
Yeah, dude. The personal attacks are brutal. Like I've tried to engage in conversation, like, "Oh, this sucks. Your podcast, great. Like, what didn't you like about it? You're stupid.
Everything.
You're
the worst."
Like, first of all, you're right. But second of all, it had nothing to do with the podcast. What are you talking about?
And if you're a particularly peaceful vegan out there, please drop your peaceful vegan comments in the YouTube channel. Please. So you can represent the vegans well. But you use the word, I love this. You use the word indoctrination earlier, and that's kind of like a a pseudo-religious term, like that there's what you didn't say you were indoctrinated in a keto carnivore. You were talking about going to get your nutrition certification and kind of re-indoctrinated into certain practices. And this is, I think this is paramountly important. I think about the psychology of nutrition a lot. And what we're finding from a biodiversity perspective, when we've mapped the entire human genome, and what we understand is that there are some genetic alleles that seem to do very well with a more plant-based diet. It's a very small percentage of the population, but when they find that pathway for themselves, they are overjoyed. I've lost weight, all my metrics feel better, awesome, great. And then what we look at on the other side of the spectrum is that far more than a small percentage of the population both need and thrive on high nutrient density, high fat, good quality protein animal products. They just do. And you know, human beings, we don't got all the sharp teeth necessarily of the saber-toothed tiger, but we're really good at hunting, and we're really good at cooking. And even with the fire, you know, there's no other species out there cooking stuff on a fire. And so we've been able to tap into something from a biological perspective that most species can't, which is the ability to have an omnivorous diet, but to prefer the really nutrient dense things that help our system. And when you look at the genetics, I mean, the genes don't lie. There are very few people who are good at making things like omega-3 fatty acids from flaxseed. but most of us need a lot of fish in order to get our omega-3 fatty acids in our diet to help our brain and our body. And so I'm not going to argue the philosophy here, but I do think it's very interesting that when somebody stumbles upon nutrition that works for them, that it becomes almost a religious experience, in the sense that, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel. And then, however your tom-tom drum goes, that everybody should join my new religion. And you know, the market often will promote that because there's a lot of money in that. There's a lot of money in operationalizing some sort of diet. Not that I mean, we're not even doing that right now. But if somebody wanted to start trying a lower carbohydrate diet, or start increasing the amount of high quality animal products in their life compared to the highly processed garbage they've been eating, and feel better, that doesn't cost any money at all. Like, it doesn't cost any money to try that. So it's very, very interesting. That word indoctrination is interesting to me, because nutrition can become an almost religious enterprise for individuals. Do you see that in your work sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be very careful about that kind of thing. Of course, you know, get into this world, and I just want to shout it from the rooftops, and the number of people that, you know, check my grocery cart at Costco, and I show them the receipt and I say, "Hey, no plants were harmed in this shopping trip." Like, dude, they don't want to hear it. Like, I gotta like cool the jets and remember that, you know, we're here to help people along if they're curious about the journey. We're not here to convert anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'll describe it like you know, it's akin to me working at the Ford store. If you like Fords, you should come and see me, because I know a lot about Fords. I can tell you a thing or two about a car, but if you want a Chevy, I'm not also yelling at people driving Chevys like, "Oh, you guys suck, you're the worst." Like, I just work at the Ford store because I like Fords.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's an idea, whether you want to, you know, believe it or not, that like every kind of animal out there has an animal specific diet. A turtle eats turtle things, and a dog eats dog things, and they're just different. They just are. Like, if you fed turtle things to a dog, they become very sick.
Mm.
You mentioned two really important things. We're really good at hunting, and that we you know, we work together. Essentially, hunting is an activity that can be done in a
Mm-hmm.
group. And you look at a human, and like, there's nothing really that special about us. We don't have those sharp teeth. We made tools. We slammed a rock against another rock, and just by that one act, however, 2-3 million years ago, created something so sharp that we then didn't need sharp things. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't need sharp teeth. We had a tool, and our brains were growing because our diet was changing. You wonder, like, why is it that our closest relatives can hang in trees far longer than we can, but they can't throw? We can throw like 3, 4, 5 times better than them. which would be very helpful if you were a hunting species. E- Exactly. And our hunting had to get more and more sophisticated over time. And yes, the other thing is we learned how to provide ourselves calories from outside of our body
Hmm.
through fire, through cooking. And
Hmm.
that was just such a huge game changer. And now you look at again this very weak, kind of not too special species that went to the moon and live in Antarctica, and we have the Olympics that have like all these so crazy diverse events that people can be really good at. We can do all kinds of different things, and so
Mm.
those things make us a little bit more special. And yeah, there is some variance in our omnivory. We are omnivores. And it's actually true that a lot of animals are also omnivores, but it's a specialization. It's not a 50-50 split for most of them.
Hmm.
It's like 80% this and 20% this. And
Hmm.
I'll challenge anybody, like you live in a very kind of green, lush area of the world.
Hmm.
I live in Salt Lake City. It's a desert, but it's still very, very green and it's a growing season. You take vacations sometimes. And when you go to vacations, where do you go? You go to Mexico, you go to tropical places, you go to very warm, nice climates. Walk around, just go on a walk anywhere that looks natural and see the crazy diversity of all the different plants around us, all the different things that are growing. How many of those can you eat? Where are you going to find food? There's just not spontaneous food growing everywhere. And it's just kind of this idea that like plants do have a different way of protecting themselves for their own reasons. And there are things that come in certain plants that can build up and can cause problems in people. Um, and so a carnivore, somebody who adapts a carnivore diet, maybe they've had suffering with digestion or skin issues. Maybe they've had joint issues. Maybe that came from oxalates or phytates or lectins, all these things that can come in plants. And they just say, you know what? I know that the animal products have all of the nutrition I need in the most nutrient dense way and nothing that I don't. And
Hmm.
regardless of how strict they want to be, like I like the definition of a carnivore as like a hyper carnivore in nature is that specialization. They eat about 70 to 75 of their calories from animal products. That's my favorite definition of carnivore. So that when somebody posts a carnivore picture of, mostly burger patties and half an avocado, I don't have to freak out and go, oh, the avocado, that didn't come from an animal. Like, really? No kidding.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of our belief, and that my concern about people that are pushing hard into a plant-based diet, again, we're given depending on how strict they go, is there's a honeymoon period for several years where somebody's going to feel better, but there's certain vitamins and minerals that you just cannot get from plants in an absorbable way. B12,
Hmm.
you mentioned DHA, EPA from fish oil, creatine, creatinine. There's just so many that you can go through that is going to be tough, and you wonder why so many people try like an only plant diet, like a vegan diet, and they have to drop off at some point because it just
Hmm.
can't keep going. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean it what's interesting is you mentioned, hey, there's a honeymoon period. That's true of any diet, period. Like if you placebo is a real thing. You can believe that something's helping you. You can do it and you could lose some weight. You could drop some water and the mechanism might be different depending on what you're actually doing, right? But the proof is in the pudding in the long term, right? The proof is in the pudding in the long term. If you make some changes and they're actually good for you, then there's no reason those changes should be any different 5 years from now. None. But if something was kind of beneficial for a brief period of time, but not forever, then those things won't stick around. Jesus said it this way because everybody was curious, like, hey, how do we know who to trust? Because everybody's saying everything about the end of the world right now. And he said, you will know them by their fruits. Because a good tree brings forth good fruit, and a bad tree brings forth bad fruit. In other words, if you watch somebody's life versus their teaching, like, how are their kids doing? What's their business like? Does the rest of the community appreciate them as an individual, or are they just spouting a bunch of nonsense up on the top of the stairs, right? Which kind of brings me back to the joke about vegans being warlike, because it's like, hey, if you're gonna attack me for my nutrition, like I feel like that's a bad fruit. I feel like you're a little uptight. You can calm down a little. And I want to get off the nutrition horse for just a second and talk about the animating impetus for personal training and coaching, because you and I share that. Neither of us are PhDs in an ivory tower. No offense to you with PhDs in an ivory tower, but not neither. We are the boots on the ground people who are actually helping real people who come to us with real problems and say, I'd like to see this change in my life. What do I do? And then what's really cool about our businesses, and if your business doesn't operate this way, please correct me. If somebody's not actually seeing progress, they stop paying me. My business hinges on whether or not what I'm giving somebody to change actually changes. And in my business, I have a very high retention business. Most of my clients stick around for 8 months or longer because we're seeing change, we're making progress, and it turns out that as you start to make some progress, you want to see more progress, and that it's healthy and good. This wasn't a fad. This isn't a thing that you could only maintain for 2 weeks. This is something that's actually changing your life in a positive direction. And so many of my clients stick around for quite a while. And I want to talk about that animating impetus because for me, I truly don't care what people eat. I truly don't. I want them to feel better and to make the most out of the body they've been given. So I often say, I want you to learn to feed yourself well, whatever that means. You and your very special fingerprint cornucopia of genetics and your likes and your environment and your microbiome, I don't care. What I care about is that on a day-to-day basis, you're getting better. You're getting stronger, you're getting healthier, you're feeding your nervous system well, you have all the nutrients that you need, your metabolism's improving. And if that's slightly different from how I think I need to be eating, great. Even better if it's completely opposite, whatever. But I would like to talk about the animating impetus because I'm driven from a nutrition perspective by the light that I see in my clients' eyes when things get better, when endometriosis clears up, when fat's finally lost that's been hanging on for a long time, when brain fog is no longer cloudy, when cholesterol levels change without having to get rid of eggs, by the way, when those things shift, that makes me excited and excited to see agency return to somebody's life where they say, you know what, I do have some control over this. I have clarity about how to feed myself well, and I don't have to think about and struggle with food all the time anymore. What is your animating impetus behind nutrition for your clients?
Man, I love the question. And just for the record, the plant-based person would interpret the scripture you cited and say, see, Jesus says we should be eating lots of fruit. So there I can't argue with that. That's what he said. So it makes sense. Dude, it's just the best. I don't know. Like we get asked all the time, like, how are you going to upscale your business? Uh, yeah, like of course we want to grow our business. It just means we're providing more value to more people. But I don't know. I just really love that aspect. And I like the way that you said it. Like it's so engaging and fun to like help somebody along. And I'm not actually doing that much, but just how it is as a coach. You think somebody's hiring you for you to then tell them exactly what to do and what to eat. Like, do you know how many hours and hours and hours I've wasted making meal plans for somebody when like literally not one of those meal plans was probably ever made ever. Like, yeah, here's what you're supposed to eat Monday, but I want a pizza, so I'm eating pizza. Like that's just how it goes. People want to do that, but like this experience happened to me twice today with two separate clients, where it was striking the way they said it. It was very similar, the two of them. They don't know each other, but they said like, I've been watching my protein. I've been cutting down my eating window and doing a little bit of intermittent fasting. My clothes are fitting better, and I finally feel like I'm not in a hurry. Like both of these people independently said like I realize I'm on the path and I feel good being on the path. Like I want to lose weight and that's going to happen. But what I'm actually noticing is like food freedom. I'm not snacking anymore. I'm not hangry anymore. Like I can go until 11 or noon and not be snapping at my kids. And like my joints feel better. And they're like, yeah, so the weight loss is happening and will happen, and that's great. But it's shifted from not being their primary goal, and they're feeling so motivated, each one of them, to continue on their path. For one of them, it's they do count their calories and try to stay under a certain amount of calories, but they focus on high protein. The other person, we talked last week, what kind of goal should we make? I didn't give them a goal, I gave them suggestions, and she chose that she was going to try to do whatever eating window and focus on protein as well, and she's been very successful. So just to hear like, wow, I feel like I'm doing this, I'm going in the right direction. It's not just that I'm looking better, I do have a weight loss goal, but it's like I feel better. It's just man, like it's better than money for a personal trainer to hear something like that. It just makes it so easy to bounce out of bed every day and like find people to help and offer value to, like you said.
Yes, yes. For me, this actually became a spiritual thing because what I noticed was when somebody came to me and their body was causing them problems, whatever the problem is, right? I'm wrestling with heart disease, or I've got an extra 150 pounds on me, or whatever. What was interesting is I noticed that the goal was for their body to cease to be an impediment or an obstacle anymore. What for whatever reason, but the question was like, what to what? Like what? Why lose 150 pounds? Why do that? They're like, oh, to look better, to feel better, blah blah blah. Okay, so that you can what? Like what's the trajectory? What's the thing? And I thought about how that's, for me, wrestling with Ehlers-Danlos, wrestling with ulcerative colitis, and trying to figure out a way through that genetic issue. Really, I wasn't interested in having six-pack abs. I wasn't interested in being able to run a marathon under 2 hours or whatever, which I can't, by the way. I got the six-pack, but I can't run the marathon in under 2 hours. I haven't gotten there.
Man.
That's ninja. But the what I really wanted was for my body not to be an impediment to showing up well for my kids, being able to jump on the trampoline and wrestle with them, and to for me, set an example as a man for my children, what it looks like to be a man, to be strong, to be prepared, to take good care of yourself, to manage I would say, to carry my cross well. That would be the religious aspect. And so what I noticed and what I started speaking in my practice is I want to help you remove your body as an obstacle to the things you want to do with your life, and think of your body as an asset. If we can build our body into something that enables us to do the things that we want to do the things we've been put here to do the things that bring us joy and peace and a sense of purpose, that for me, that became a very, very spiritual thing. And I know that you and I differ in our faith tradition, but I'm curious for you, has this reached down into you that deeply that this is part of something that you're part of something bigger than yourself here? How deep does this go for you?
100%. You couldn't have said that better. It is something I would consider deeply spiritual for sure. Um, I would say a very big component of that was changing my diet. Keto was a good step, but going carnivore, I can say that my spirituality increased.
Mm.
I've taken up meditation practices multiple times in my life. I did it once or twice, not on the diet, and once on the diet. And maybe I was in a better place, or I was older, more experienced, whatever. I'd done it before, but I would strongly contend that my level of gratitude and spirituality is much higher when I eat what I know are the right foods for me,
Hmm.
recognizing that where they came from, what life was taken to have them, the nourishment that I get from them just makes my brain and my spirit feel so much better. And I get that anecdote all the time for people that end up
Hmm.
trying this diet. So that's a big part of it. And yes, I take I take what I do very seriously. I'm ritualistic in the things that are very important to me. So before I do a podcast, I do the same thing every time. When I go to the hockey rink, I put my equipment on exactly the same way. It's a little superstitious. What is Michael Scott said? I'm not superstitious. I'm just normal stitious. Um,
Yes, that's a great office quote.
I, I warm up the exact same way. Before I go to work, I put on the same clothes every time. I wear the same thing, and I do the same thing every time before I see my clients. And to me, it's a spiritual thing to be able to get to connect with somebody. And again, this is another one that just came up today where like my client was asking me like, "Are you stressed out?" I'm like, "No, I just changed your program. I'm really like watching you, do these things. I want to make sure, you've had lower back pain and we're taking steps to get off of that. I'm just really watching. I'm not stressed. I'm good." And she's like, "Yeah, I know you. I know your face." And I'm like, "Isn't it weird how much time you and I end up spending together in a very intimate setting in your basement, like an
Mm.
hour a week for a lot of weeks? How many of your friends do you spend an hour with directly one on one, let alone the people that want to do multiple days?" And they've done it for years. Like
Hmm.
you said, I'm really good at retaining my people. If people start with me, they're likely to continue because I'm really focused on creating a high amount of value for them and trying to customize everything the best I can for them on that day.
Hmm.
And like you are with these people, you laugh with them, you cry with them, you go through life together with them, and it's like, man, they become, you have intimate relationships with them, and I take that very, very seriously.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's. I'm glad you brought that up. But yes, I would argue strongly that it's a very spiritual thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I found that to be the case, and there's also an element of sacrifice in there too. My clients don't know unless like we've been working together for a long time and they just observe it. But my clients don't know if I'm having a bad day because I've come to this session to serve them. I've come to this session to make it the best that I know how to make it, and it's I do the same thing in parenting with my own children. I spend a lot of time with my boys, and they might not know daddy's stressed about this thing. They might not know that daddy's knee hurts. They might not know that daddy has a headache or whatever. We're going to do this thing full tilt. And as they grow and mature, I can share those things with them. But the same thing happens with a client. My client doesn't know. I've done 3 of these sessions and I've been sweating like a pig in Arkansas. So like I'm physically spent, but you won't know because we're gonna crush this together and have a good time. And then I'm gonna go get some eggs and take a nap, like because that's what's gonna happen after this session to recover. But I take that so seriously, and there is I would say that a big element of that is why personal training and coaching in that sense, it's not going to be replaced anytime soon. There's a whole idea in this whole spectrum of fitness that AI is going to take over and write the perfect programs and the meal plans and stuff. And it's so interesting to me. It's like, I mean, I get it. It's a great tool. Sometimes people just need information. But oftentimes I believe what people need is the encouragement and support of somebody who believes in them. And AI can't do that. Like it just can't. Chat GPT can't rah-rah you into getting your squats done. It just doesn't
Good point.
happen. While at the same time talking about the stress of your workplace. So that said, I'm grateful for what you do. I'm grateful for the work that you started with Boundless Body Radio, and also grateful for the niche that you found in nutrition that works for you, but also that you get to coach people through. My question to you is, how can listeners of this podcast or viewers on YouTube, how can they get connected to your work in a way that if they want to dive in more about what you had to say or connect to some of your products and services online, how can they do that?
Thank you, Alex. It's always meaningful to chat with you, and I really appreciate this conversation. And I appreciate the level of care and depth that you go to and when asking questions. And it was a real honor to be here. The easiest place is just to go to myboundlessbody.com. That's our website. We try to make it as easy as possible, where you can find all our social media. You can find the podcast there. Last summer, I did a series of nutrition seminars in my neighborhood at a park. I have everything there for that. The videos, there's curriculum, there's meal plans, there's all that stuff. You can access all that for free. But the very first thing that you can see on the website is a book now button. Anybody can click on that and set up a complimentary 30-minute session from wherever you are in the world. It will all sync to your schedule and your time zone. So we make that very, very easy. So yeah, feel free to follow us on all those other channels and YouTube and all that. But you can find that on the website, which again, myboundlessbody.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that so much. As we're wrapping up here, I always pray over individuals who come onto my podcast so that that God would bless their work and the difference that they're making in the world. But I do have one final question for you that I'd like to throw in there. And I know we're coming up on time, so it doesn't have to be super in depth. But I'm curious. When I've got flies. Oh, sorry. Almost got them. But when I talk about faith, there is one of 3 reactions. The first reaction is somebody who is of the same faith and is like, oh, okay, you're in my camp. Like I'm a Christian, I understand, which is arguable whether or not we all understand what that actually means, by the way. But there's that one reaction. The second reaction is something along the lines of, I think Christians are stupid and strange, and so, well, obviously you can't hold this belief structure and also be an educated individual worth understanding and getting to know. And so that's unfortunate, but that reaction exists. And then the third is, I don't know if I understand or agree with everything you believe, but I am open to still being a human with you. And so you're number three in my book. If I'm wrong, let me know. But you're number three in my book in the sense that I'm so grateful that we get to have these conversations, even if we don't necessarily agree on everything. I was curious from your perspective, is there anything that you find in the Christian faith that you are like, that's cool. I'm really glad that exists, and I'm grateful that that's how it works in the world.
Yes, 100% yes. I was brought up in the Mormon faith, very Christian faith. I did a 2-year mission in Brazil where for 2 years, all I did was teach people about the Bible. Obviously, the Mormons believe also in the Book of Mormon and other books and different things. But the core tenets of Christianity are something that are still very much a part of my day to day to day.
Mm.
And faith is a huge thing in my life. Like when we face challenges, which we all do, like yeah, to believe that this is for a reason, this is going to be, become something better. There's a Mormons have a every 6 months the church leaders get together and like have talks and sermons and that kind of thing. And there's one that stands out to me. I believe the scripture is Hebrews 9:11. Something about believing in an high priest, a high priest of good things to come.
Mm.
And one of the apostles, the leader, talks about a story where he leaves a town with his little family. They have to move. They've got no money. His car breaks down. He has to walk back to the next town, and a guy drives them all back to the town. They try to take a look at the car and try to fix it up. They drive back out of town, and almost like within 10 feet of the last place the car blew up, it blows up again. And he walks back to town. He finds the same dude that gives him another ride, and he's like, either you or somebody that looks like you is having not a lot of luck with cars right now. And anyway, it's 40, 50 years later, and he's driving by the same spot, visiting relatives or whatever, and he drives by, and he describes, like, in his mind eye, seeing that young father with no money, and just like just slope the weight of the world on his shoulder. And he just, like, in his head, I'll probably get a little emotional, but in his head, he says to his younger self, like, don't you quit, don't you stop. There is so much more happiness to come. Like, I'm sitting in my car, my wife's asleep. It's a safe car that gets me from point A to point B. I had a good career. Like, and he just says, trust in the high priest of good things to come.
Mm.
And so I think about that. I read that story a lot. And I think having faith is just such an important thing for all of us to do. So yes, there's so much to the Christian faith and a lot of other faiths that I find really inspiring and try to make them a part of my life.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think at the very core of this health and fitness coaching and training thing, it is a practice of faith when I can look at somebody and see who they could be in the next couple of years if we jointly did things right by them, and put in the work and disciplined the process and guided the path and made changes as we need to along the way. And so from me to you, I'm grateful that you operate in faith in that way, because it's needed and necessary, and at the same time the fruit of that we don't always get to see. So if you would, on that note, I'd like to pray over you and Boundless Body and close us out here.
Sounds great.
Father God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the opportunity to spend time with Casey, and thank you for the way that you brought us together years ago in a sense that was encouraging to both of us and continues to be so. God, I pray for his enterprise and Boundless Body and his wife Bethany. God, I pray that you will reveal yourself to them in a way that only they could understand. I also pray that you'll bless the work of their hands when they work with individuals, and that you'll animate them with genuine love, genuine gratitude, and genuine peace to help people find the truth about how to feed themselves well. God, I also pray that you bless this podcast, that it'll land on the ears that need to hear it, to find freedom and truth in their own nutrition practice. We love you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, brother, thank you so much. And you listeners, you guys know what I'm about to say, guys. This has been Coach Alex Van Houten on the Faithful Fitness Podcast. Until next time, train hard, but pray harder.